Voilà. Salut Bana Congo, salut Bandi Konangai. Et vraiment, c'est important, Topé Sabino Flash Oyo, parce que il y a des choses vraiment obscures ou encore des terribles moments que nous sommes en train de vivre partout dans toute l'Afrique, l'Afrique entière. Et c'est vraiment, je pourrais dire étonnant, mais ce n'est pas étonnant. Quand je dis étonnant, c'est parce que Éthiopie a été affectée par la famine. Ça fait plusieurs années. Et vraiment, aujourd'hui, nous remarquons que la même Éthiopie est encore affectée par la famine. La famine, à ce moment ici, frappe la nation éthiopienne. C'est vraiment inacceptable au XXIe siècle de vivre encore ce genre de choses. C'est pour cela, peuple congolais, ceux qui sont congolais, tout kébité. Ceux qui sont congolais, tout s'aligner sima. Il y a une bonne valeur. Na Moutouneti Martin Fayulu Madidi. Tant que petit mot d'ordre, il y a article 64. En tout cas, le moment va venir. Bisognon sur photos en balabala. So quitté. Tokozala coûte pire que Éthiopie. Éthiopie coûte une minute et mieux parce que bazana ba infrastructure na bango baza quand même organisé malgré que nzala ekoti mais naebi que Ethiopian Airlines ezali pe ya bango penza te ezali na pays moko eza sima na yango tokoyebisa bino komba pays yango te mais du moins Éthiopie alonga pe ba makambo mususu mais biso na Congo tous allons un problème sérieux. J'interpelle encore une fois, soutenons Martin Fayulu Madidi. Dans ces cas ici, peuple congolais, nous allons directement en Éthiopie, un pays marqué par une histoire de famine meurtrière, zéro. Donc, de 6 millions de personnes dans la région du Tigré n'ont reçu d'aide alimentaire en mai suite à la suspension de dons par les États-Unis d'Amérique et les Nations Unies. Selon un mémo des Nations Unies, consulté par Associated Press, c'est sans précédent, précise les mémos. Bana bazoko kufa na nzala na minitio na Éthiopie, makambo eza mabe, makambo eza koyinda. Alors, peuple congolais, nous allons vous donner cela en anglais, mais avant de vous donner cette information en anglais, parce que je veux qu'une bonne partie de suivre ça, il y a plusieurs personnes qui ne savent pas qu'en Éthiopie, ça barde. Surtout les anglophones ne savent pas ça. Les francophones, boye bien parce que nga papa ino na yoye bisabino, so yupe boye bagi déjà, et c'est aussi une bonne chose, mais nga na yoko baki ça. In Ethiopia, which has a history of deadly hunger, 0 of the 6 million people in Tigré received food and may affect the pause in donations by the United States and the United Nations. According to the United Nations, the memo has been provided by AP that's unprecedented, it said. Alors, peuple congolais, nous allons ensemble voir ce qui s'est en train de dire ici. Ce qui est en train de se dire ici, c'est ça que j'allais dire. Tolanda, peuple congolais, Malembe, Tolanda. Nous allons le faire en anglais. Et puis nous allons interpeller Piers Porter. Piers Porter, c'est LHYIVE London. Amigana Nuko Limboula Bisso. On y va. Suivez, peuple congolais. Suivez le monde entier. Cette news ici, c'est en anglais. Voilà. Mais vous avez compris parce que je vous ai expliqué ce qui se passe au juste en Éthiopie. Bref. C'est parti. Nous allons tous écouter et nous allons peut-être commenter. Merci. 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 C'est parti. Voilà. Alors, pour rappel, peuple congolais, vous êtes sur www.cntlive.com, votre chaîne. Suivez.
In Ethiopia, which has a history of deadly hunger, 0 of the 6 million people in Tigré received food aid in May after the pause in donations by the United States and the United Nations, according to the United Nations memo seen by the AP. That's unprecedented, it said. Piers Potter, LHYIVE London. An Orthodox Christian priest, Tesfa Kiros Meresfa, begs door-to-door for food along with countless others recovering from a 2-year war in northern Ethiopia that starved his people. To his dismay, urgently needed grain and oil have disappeared again for millions caught in a standoff between Ethiopia's government, the United States and the United Nations over what United States. Officials say may be the biggest theft of food aid on record. I have no words to describe our suffering, Tesfa said. As the United States and the United Nations demand that Ethiopia's government yield its control over the vast aid delivery system supporting 1/6 of the country's population, they have taken the dramatic step of suspending their food aid to Africa's second most populous nation until they can be sure it won't be stolen by Ethiopian officials and fighters. Almost 3 months have passed since the aid suspension in parts of the country, and reports are emerging of the first deaths from starvation during the pause. At the earliest, aid to the northern Tigré region will return in July, the United States and the United Nations say, and to the rest of the country at some point after that when reforms in aid distribution allow. Tesfa, who lives in a school compound with hundreds of others displaced by the war in Tigré, laughed when asked how many meals he eats a day. The question is a joke, he said. We often go to sleep without food. In interviews with the United States and the United Nations, aid agencies, humanitarian organizations and diplomats offered new findings on the countrywide diversion of aid to military units and markets. That included allegations that some senior Ethiopian officials were extensively involved. The discovery in March of enough stolen food aid to feed 134,000 people for a month in a single Tigré town is just a glimpse of the scale of the theft that the United States, Ethiopia's largest humanitarian donor, is trying to grasp. The food meant for needy families was found instead for sale in markets or stacked at commercial flour mills, still marked with the United States flag. The implications for the United States are global, proving it can detect and stop the theft of aid paid for by United States taxpayers is vital at a time when the Biden administration is fighting to maintain public support for aid to corruption-plagued Ukraine. At a private meeting last week in Ethiopia, United States, aid officials told international partners that this could be the largest ever diversion of food aid in any country, aid workers said. In an interview with the AP, a senior official with the United States Agency for International Development said the exact amount of food aid stolen may never be known. Donated medical supplies also were stolen, according to a Western diplomat and the United Nations official who, like others, spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly. With USAID giving Ethiopia's government $1.8 billion in humanitarian assistance since 2022, a delay in providing food aid causes widespread pain. Millions of people went hungry during the war while food stocks were looted, burned, and withheld by combatants and the United Nations. Investigators have warned of possible starvation-linked war crimes. Now the hunger is being traced to corruption. Preliminary findings released this month by Tigré regional authorities said they have tracked the theft of more than 7,000 metric tons of donated wheat, or £15 million, in their region, taken by federal and regional authorities and others. The findings did not specify the time. Other regions have yet to report amounts. Ethiopia's government dismisses as harmful propaganda the suggestion that it bears primary responsibility for the disappearance of aid in Tigré and other regions, but it has agreed to a joint investigation with the United States. While the United Nations' World Food Programme carries out a separate probe. The way that Western aid officials distance themselves from the accusations by linking the alleged problem only to government institutions and procedures is absolutely unacceptable and very contrary to the reality on the ground, government spokesman Lajes Tulu told reporters earlier this month. He and other government spokespeople did not immediately respond to messages from the AP. Aid workers say humanitarian agencies have long tolerated a degree of corruption by government officials. Provision of aid in Ethiopia has been heavily politicized for decades, including during the devastating famine of the 1980s, when the then communist regime blocked assistance to areas controlled by rebel groups. The senior USAID official told the AP that the latest theft of United States and the United Nations food aid included the manipulation of beneficiary lists that the Ethiopian government has insisted on controlling, looting by Ethiopian government and Tigré forces and forces from neighboring Eritrea, and the diversion of massive amounts of donated wheat to commercial flour mills in at least 63 sites. A former Tigré official said government workers often inflate beneficiary numbers and take the extra grain for themselves, a practice that two officials with international organizations working in Ethiopia called widespread elsewhere in the country. Numerous officials accused WFP of simply dropping off rations in the middle of towns, where much of the aid was looted by forces from Eritrea. There were also signs that people whom the USAID official described only as market actors were forcing hungry families to surrender food aid they received, something that WFP suspects as well. With 20 million people across Ethiopia dependent on such aid, plus more than 800,000 refugees from Somalia and elsewhere, independent humanitarian groups warn that even a quick resolution to the dispute could see many people starve to death. In the United Nations Food Agency's first extensive public comments, the WFP Regional Director for East Africa, Michael Dunford, acknowledged possible shortcomings in its monitoring of aid distribution. "We accept that we could have done better," he told the AP this week. But until now, Dunford said, it's been very much the Ethiopian government that was managing the process. For USAID's part, the senior agency official cited a range of reasons that United States officials missed the extent of the aid theft for so long. The war blocked the agency's ground access to the Tigré region for 20 months. Elsewhere in the country, COVID restrictions and security concerns limited USAID's oversight, the official said. Some Republican and Democratic lawmakers said the rare countrywide suspension of aid showed USAID is taking the theft of United States aid with appropriate seriousness. Asked if he was concerned about USAID oversight, a senior Democrat, Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, said, "I'm concerned about the ways in which the Ethiopian military and government may have systematically diverted food that was meant for hungry Ethiopians." Senator Jim Risch of Idaho, the top Republican on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said tough questions need to be answered, and our partner must demonstrate some willingness to cooperate. There must be a fundamental change in how we do food assistance in Ethiopia if we are going to resume USAID food aid there, Risch said, and called for accountability and transparency. The first principle of humanitarian aid is to do no harm. From what I understand, harm has been done. We must ensure for the American taxpayer that this doesn't continue to happen. United States and the United Nations officials said they were working to limit, or end, Ethiopian government officials' role in the aid system. "We're taking back all the control over the commodities," Dunford said. "The entire supply chain, from the time that we receive the food in the country to the time it's in the hands of the beneficiaries. Plans include third-party distribution, real-time third-party monitoring, and biometric registration of beneficiaries," he said. The United States Government wants Ethiopia's government to remove itself from the compilation of beneficiary lists and the transport, warehousing, and distribution of aid, according to a briefing memo by donors seen by the AP. The senior USAID official said Ethiopia's government has committed to cooperate on reforms, but we have not yet seen the specific reforms in place that would allow us to resume aid. Civilians, again, are suffering. Ethiopia's harvest season is over, and the lean season is approaching. The United Nations Humanitarian Agency has privately expressed fears of mass starvation in remote parts of Tigré, according to an assessment made in April and seen by the AP. Another assessment in May cited reports of 20 people dying of starvation in Sam, a short drive from the Tigré capital, Mekelle. Tigré's main hospital reported a 28% increase in the number of children admitted for malnutrition from March to April. At the hospital in Axum town, the increase was 96%. Piers Potter, LHYIVE London.
Voilà. Merci encore une fois. Restez branchés sur votre chaîne.